So to discuss what foreign policy lessons we can draw from Obama's State of the Union speech, we're joined by Dr. Ian Lesser, Senior Director for Security and Foreign Policy at the German Marshall Fund of the United States. You're based here in Brussels. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
So there was very little focus, it seemed, on foreign policy in this speech, so much attention devoted to domestic issues. Why was that?
Well, I understand that foreign audiences look at these speeches and expect to hear about the world, but in truth, State of the Union addresses tend to be focused on domestic policy, whether it's healthcare or the economy or immigration reform. And of course, Obama talked about all of those things. I wouldn't read it as a kind of isolationist speech or an inward-looking speech.
So there was something else you said that was very interesting, which surprised me somewhat. Our alliance with Europe remains the strongest the world has ever known. Now, there's been so much talk about pivots or rebalancing, whichever the current buzzword is, but also the Snowden scandal.
Well, I think this question of trust and the need to reassure Europeans, but also Americans, about the solidity of the relationship across the Atlantic is the background, the context to that sentence that was in the speech. And I think the administration does believe this in many, many ways, leaving aside these differences over whether it might be Guantanamo or NSA surveillance or other issues that have been very, very controversial. There is a core of shared interest which is very, very, very strong. I mean, and it's not just diplomatic and security cooperation, it's also trade and investment. And if you look at the risks in Asia and this question about a pivot, it's really all on the military issues and these long-term kind of concerns about strategic competition with China, or crises that could emerge, which would really be existential for the United States. Fortunately, we don't have those kinds of contingencies in the Atlantic. So I think the president was right to underscore the sort of the solidity of the U.S.-Europe relationship.
Obama's going to be in Brussels for an EU-US summit at the end of March. What do you expect will be the big takeaways from that summit?
Well, I think a lot of it will be about trade. A lot of it will be about growth. I think there is a question of how we, in our own public policies on both sides of the Atlantic, deal with issues of income inequality. Actually, there was a lot of that in the speech that we heard last night. There will no doubt be discussion about Iran, perhaps about the peace process. We'll have to see what's on the agenda at that point, and maybe even NATO policy, because we have a NATO summit coming up in the fall, and the member countries are beginning to sort of queue up their approaches to that.
So perhaps the Europeans having to do more on defence spending. That's a popular topic that always comes up.
Always popular. In fact, I think Obama probably would do well not to mention that one, but that's a perennial with the United States, and especially for Congress, trying to get Europe to do more in terms of defence spending, burden sharing. It's not a popular message to bring to Europe ever, but it's one that probably requires some kind of a discussion, especially as we all withdraw from Afghanistan.
Well, Dr. Ian Lesser of the German Marshall Fund, thank you very much for your insight.
Good to be with you. Thank you.